Hello and welcome to episode 2 of The Godly Physicist. My name is Matthew Trump and I use this podcast to talk about God, faith, science, and reason and how they all overlap. I'm here today for the second day in a row out at what is my favorite sitting spot in this part of the undeveloped desert near where I live. And I have, you probably can't see it today, but the cactus that was in yesterday's episode is right nearby, and there's something about having the cactus here. There's a plane flying over. There's something about having the cactus here that provides this point of reference that makes it feel comfortable for me to bring out my camp stool and sit here at all times of the year to think about nature. It wasn't my intention to make the podcast here all the time, and it isn't. I may be somewhere else tomorrow. In fact, I thought I would just do it at my desk inside my apartment, but there's something compelling about, for me at least, about coming out into the world like this to talk about physics. And especially as a theoretician, in which I do so much of my work in my head and on a chalkboard or on a whiteboard, and ultimately typing things up in a paper. Usually we think of doing physics experiments in a laboratory, indoors. But coming out here, I'm reminded of the beauty of the world, the beauty of God's creation, and all the different elements, the different crude Aristotelian elements like air, earth, fire, sun. It's right now very hot, and water. There's a pond nearby. And how they create nature in all their patterns and designs according to God's plan. So it helps me as a theoretician to come out here and simply to be out in the world and remind myself of all the things that physics applies to. It applies in the laboratory, it applies for things at a desk, everywhere. Physics is, the laws of physics apply throughout the universe, just as God is present throughout the universe. But as I said, being out here, I feel more reminded of that, being out in the world and seeing the phenomena of nature with my own eyes and hearing it with my own ears reminds me of the scope of physics and the scope of God's creation. And I think that's the thought I had for today that I wanted to go forth in the day with, is what physics is. I think physics can be described in some sense as the science of God's creation. That it is a science that gives us insight through our reason to all of the scope of the things that God has created throughout the universe, from the things very intimate to us as we sit at our desks and go about our daily lives, to the grand scope of nature and the grand sweep of things that are around. So in days ahead, I plan to talk more about specific things that I enjoy out here that remind me of things that are powerful both in physics and that remind me of God. Oh, one thing I wanted to remember to say in this one is that yesterday I was talking about how there are voices on the internet that have inspired me, voices and Christian leaders that have inspired me, and I mentioned a couple of them. I mentioned a Catholic podcast that I listen to, Ascension Presents with Father Mike Schmitz, and I said that there are Orthodox ones too, and it would be unjust not to mention Father Spiridon Bailey, who is an Orthodox priest living in England. I believe he lives in England, and he's one of the best voices on the internet, on YouTube. It's almost one of those things that make you think this is what YouTube was made for, so that men like that could have a voice and speak to us. He had a great one I was just listening to called "Do Not Let Your Heart Be Troubled," which I highly recommend. So check him out. Thank you.